Okay, this is the fourth part of the survival trapping and snaring is mostly mental masturbation part of the series I'm going to be doing. I'm in my kitchen because it's white. We've got a lot of light. Snares have a tendency to disappear. So this is not, it's just easier to see this than being out in the woods because they do have a tendency to disappear. But have you ever wondered, if you work for the Treasury Department, how are you trained to find counterfeit dollars? Do you look at all the other stuff out there and what they do to make counterfeit? No, you learn everything there is about the real deal, the dollar bill. That way when anything is off, because you've studied the real thing so much, you'll know that something's off. That's kind of where I want to get you to go. Now I'm going to get ready to show you some real snares that actually catch and actually hold things. They're very efficient and they're fast to put up. We're going to go over some rules with snares really quick on this. This is what I consider a modern snare. Now, can you see this in front of my shirt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This does not have to be exactly like my snares for yours to be very good. You'll notice it has a very smooth lock. That's extremely important. It needs to be crimped with either nuts like this one is or aluminum ferrules. It should, if you're ever going to be using a bigger wire, have some type of plastic tubing or something called a whammy. Now when I use this vernacular in snaring, please keep in mind, I've been doing this for a long time. Trappers speak their own talk just like, gun people speak their own talk or doctors have their own vernacular. So, and then when I'm going to go down, and what I found to be the best way to do the snare is this will run in, and it has if you'll notice, a small washer before it comes to the crimp. That way it doesn't get caught up in the swivel. Then I've got a swivel here that's what we consider mid-chain or mid-cable. It's right dead in the middle. And then I've got a pigtail, which is just the end that you can wrap the snare through or tie off or do something like that. Now, for your snares, you don't have to have the same lock. You can use aluminum ferrules. You can use fishing swivels that are like 800-pound rating for their swivel, or you can have it on the end if you want to. This is just the most efficient way that I found, and I've got a little partner here who wants to get in on the action. But this is what a real snare looks like. If it has anything like this involved, that's a counterfeit. If it's floral wire from Walmart, it's a counterfeit. This right here, and I'm going to go over some technical stuff, and I don't want to freak you out when I do this. I just want you to know why we're picking the stuff that we're picking. This beginning of the cable is called 1x19 cable. The end of the cable is a totally different kind of cable. It is 7x7. This is the standard snare swivels that you'll buy most places. It'll work. It's not bad, but it's not as good is the 1x19. Now this is 5/64. That's the diameter. 1x19 is the type of cable that it is. The reason I want this to be 1x19, you'll see this is much softer, and this is actually a tie-off to show you the difference of this. This is a whole different kind of cable that you'd never make a snare out of. But you see how loose that is? That's not what you want. You want stiffness. It's tempered more. It's got 19 strands that are wound around each other. When you look at the break-in poundage of this, which is 3/32, that's about 1,000 pounds. I can go down a size, which hides the snare from the animal a whole lot easier because it's stronger. The other interesting thing about 1x19 with all the snares that I've used is when an animal starts biting this and twisting, it does not fray and come apart as easy as the 7x7. Now the 1x19 is a little more expensive, so on the pigtail part where it's not as important, that's the reason I use the 7x7. I just want to explain these things out to you just so you kind of have a grasp, because when I go down to Texas, we're doing predator control work, I can go into any farm supply place and they've got snares and they're terrible. They are made out of metal. They've got locks. You got to drag the things to get them to close. You got to sit there and play with them, and it's just not the most efficient way. So this is why I say that a snare, and if you have to use a spring pole, it's a counterfeit. If a beaver comes up to this and barely touches it, he's caught. I'm not putting very much emphasis on that at all. If I'm running for raccoon and a raccoon comes up and touches it, he's caught. I'm not relying on something to pull that away. With good quality equipment, guys, you don't need to be spending all that time trying to bring over trees and tying up all these toggles and all that type of nonsense. With a good snare, you put it in the trail, you get it to where it wants to go, you may block it in or not. When the animal comes up, he gets caught. It's as simple as that. Now this lock here is called a micro lock. There is BMI mini locks, there's all kind of locks. Slim locks are good locks. This is just the one that I choose. Where I get these from is the Snare Shop out of Iowa. Jeremy's the owner of that. That's economical. It does a very good job. It's not the most killing type lock that there is. And when you're looking at locks, like I said at the beginning of the series, your solution could be very different from mine. I live in Tennessee. So it means I live in the South. It's very humid. There's a lock that's got a huge popularity group behind it that are called cam locks, and that has a little rivet in the middle, and it has to move back and forth for it to work. Now in western parts of the world where it's dry and rust is not that common, you don't have the humidity, it's probably the best lock that you can get. In the South, it'd be even worse in Louisiana or East Texas or something like that. That little rivet will get rust in it and it won't allow it to close. So you have to think through each individual part of what you're going to be doing when it comes to snares. See, this is a real snare. This can hold, I can catch under the fence, I can catch coyotes, I can catch bobcats, I can catch beaver with that, I can do everything else with it. Now there's some other things that you'll know if you're looking at a counterfeit snare system or the real deal. Now, we're going to get into something called deconstruction, not on this video, but if you have to start going primitive because of whatever reason, your main goal at that point is to know what the real deal is and then deconstruct it with the littlest amount of inefficiencies that you can build into that. So when I go out snaring, this is what it looks like. This is a commercially built snare support that anybody with a welding shop can do. This is number 9 wire. You'll see it's very stiff, you know, to move. It's like what you put on the corner of a fence, but it's annealed, so it's soft. I can move it around. Now the snare support goes in the ground, and I'm going to tie off with an extension cable, which just hooks through this end and around the tree. Very, very basic. I can wire this directly off to a tree. Let's say there's a tree really close. I can just wire this, or 550 cord it if you just got to use some 550 cord up on the tree like that. You can do that right there. But the rules of snaring, so you know you're dealing with something that's not a counterfeit. You have to look at a snare the way any of y'all would look at your tactical rifle. When you go to shoot a shot at 10 feet, you can be pretty sloppy. You know, it's really close. Now let's take our mentality out to 500, 800 yards with a good 308, 30-06 or 338 lapel, whatever you got. You have to do that very, very differently. You can't just jerk the gun because, you know, a little bitty fuzz hair off is going to be 20 feet by the time it gets out to 800 yards. Treat the snare the same way. This is your gun when you're going out to snare something. When this is pushed in the ground, this is very stable. You'll notice there's nothing around this that's flopping around. The wind can blow, it can do whatever it wants to do. This is staying stationary. This is your trigger, just like on your gun. The only part on a gun on an 800-yard shot that better move is the trigger. We all know that. If anything on your snare is moving before the trigger part, think of what happens when we get into showing you how crappy this is for snares. Keep that little part right there in mind. Because if this is moving around, you're not controlling the catch. And then you're trying to hope that you've got that drunk, retarded animal I was telling you about. So when an animal comes up, like a beaver or a big raccoon or groundhog or whatever it is you're after, when he comes up, and he's going to notice this, I promise you. He's definitely going to notice this. And he'll make the decision to go through this or not. And all he has to do is with his chest, because we want off the ground, like for a beaver, he's going to be kind of coming in, he's going to touch it, and it's going to catch it. Now, if this is wobbling all over the place, the way that most primitive snares are, your trigger's wrong. So if we got this out here, and this is sitting over here kind of flopping around, the wind's blowing, what in the world is he going to be doing? If you notice, it takes way more tension for that to go off at that point. So the trigger needs to be solid, and you don't have to use this. We're going to go into different methods where you don't have to have one of these. I'm showing you what a professional trapper uses, so I can have the best bench rest for my trigger that I can with this right here. We can use sticks, we can use sticks and wire, we can get creative with that if you want to, but make sure the premises of this is exactly the same. Now, really the main rules of snaring that you need to understand. You need to know what's going down the trail. You need to know what kind of trail it is, which brings in, you're going to have to learn animal tracks and animal habits. And that's a fun thing to learn, guys. Don't let that scare you. It's quite amazing. You start looking for tracks, you start finding them everywhere, you start seeing where they're going, start kind of getting the mind of the animal, you become a better trapper. So this has to be on the trail. You can't bait this in any degree, and I don't recommend any type of bait around this whatsoever. Don't stick a little stick in here with some meat on it or something like that. This is the deadliest thing that you can use, and you don't have to have a lot of skill to do it. It needs to be in the trail that the animal's on. It needs to be centered in the trail. You need to know what animal you're going after. A beaver is about 2 inches off the ground. A raccoon-sized loop, especially for ours around here, is only about 6 or 7 inches, and it's going to be 6 or 7 inches off. If I do this big one with the beaver, because the beaver's got a big body and it's 2 inches off the ground, the raccoon can go through this. And if you go back on the YouTube, when I was on Texas, before I started using the body grips and the fences, we're running snares that are this big. That's not much bigger than my fist. So when someone tells you a squirrel snare as big as your fist, you need to start thinking about that. We're running under these or dig outs under high fences on deer ranches. We had a big rain. I thought I was doing good. We're catching 3, 4 bobcats a day, another 8 or 9 coyotes a day, so I think we're doing good. When it rained, I had, if I remember right, it was 5 or 6 by the tracks were about 20 to 25 pound cats go through my snares that one night. Not a single snare was knocked down. There was tracks here and there was tracks here. Animals can slink through this, so that's why you have to know the right sizes for the animals that you're going to be doing. So just having a generic size means you're not going to be good at anything. So that's why you have to know what the animal is. This is the basic design of what a real snare is. Like I said, some trappers don't use the mid swivel because it costs a little bit more and takes a little longer to make. They use 7x7 because it's more common, but they will have a higher percentage of chew outs. And I want you to keep in mind, like I told you, even with this setup, I'm probably running about a 2% loss. You go to this, you're going to jump up to the 7-8% loss. You go to this with anything with teeth, you're going to probably bump in about an 80% loss. So keep all that in mind of what it is. This is a 5/64. I'm gonna give you a down and dirty little secret about deer. They're really easy to catch. The reason I know they're easy to catch is because I've had to go out of my way to learn not to catch them. If you go out and snare deer because you think it's cool and you get caught, you're going to jail. And if you're doing it for fun, you should be there. So I'm just open that. I'm not giving you permission to go deer snaring. What I've learned when I'm doing coyote snare, this is about a 16-inch loop. On our size whitetail here in Tennessee, it needs to be about 16 inches off the ground. And when you'll notice, you'll always catch does, hardly ever anytime when you catch a buck, because the does go forward. Think about when you're in a tree stand, the does always go out first and the buck makes sure no one's there to shoot him before he goes out. That's as big as you need. Not these great big hopping things that you see made out of all kind of crap on YouTube. That's ridiculous. That's like for a moose maybe, but it's not for a deer. That's all you need. If you're in Canada, you might want to extend this out to where it's about 2 more inches at the most. The more you spread this out, the less control you have. So when the deer's coming down, and you can put a little stick over it, which will show on different animals, and when he touches it, it just closes. When he comes off, he can never get out of that, and if it's around the neck, the deer will be dead in just a few minutes. That's why I had to learn not to catch them and where not to put them. So, but that also taught me how to catch them if I ever had to. Not that I go out deer snaring or anything, but that's all you need for a deer snare. This is all you need for a hog. It doesn't matter if I put the swivel here and run that out to something, I can hold 300-400 pound hogs in this, and I can, if I need to, I can bring it all the way down and catch the glorious little rabbit. It was something about that big. So this is more set up for deer. So when I was showing you the package, I'd always have a couple of these that are hooked up with this side if I ever needed to actually go snare deer, which luckily I never had on purpose. But that's all it is right there. Now you'll notice, because this is brand new and just been made, I want to show you a couple little things about your snares. You see how this rides into this right here? That's going to cause tension. You can hear that as it goes down. Now these others have already been bent. Now some snares will not have a single stop, and it'll be bent around into what we call a double ferrule, which is this right here. So you can put two pieces of the cable in there, and that's totally fine. You want this to be swinging loosely in there. If that's not bent that way, it's going to put pressure on this lock, and then it's not going to fire very well. Now, just to keep this video a little bit shorter, so I want to keep it on one thought process here about what a real snare is. We're going to do another one that won't say it's in the series, but I'm going to show you how to load a snare, which is what this is, so you can have the fastness of what you see right here. Because if you just order snares from a catalog, you're gonna get them out and think you've been gypped, because you're gonna open it up and you're gonna go, well, Clint just barely put his finger on there and it moved. Well, that's because mine are loaded. That's another reason I want the 1x19. Not only is it stronger, not only does it handle teeth and twisting better, it allows me to put this little bend in here, which doesn't seem that complicated, but I promise you when you start it, you're going to screw up a bunch of them, but that's okay. That's part of learning. But once you get it down, it's just second nature. But this, guys, is what a real snare is. If anything you look at doesn't meet this criteria of what a real $1 bill is, it's a counterfeit. And you need to step away from that if all possible. And my cameraman, the lawyer there, says that I better bring this up. Check your state laws about what your state has, because this is legal in Tennessee and it is illegal in Alabama, and it's illegal in a lot of the northern states where y'all have all these crazy rules like a communist country up there. They have what they call cable restraints, and there's a lot more gear and stuff that goes on here. But the reason I'm telling you this is when you go out to practice, which I highly recommend that you do it by the law of your state. Not just because you just want to go out and practice a skill. So if you can't use a snare, say in Alabama, which you can't, then you can come up to Tennessee. Well, take a vacation every couple of years, bring a couple hundred snares, catch some beaver and some raccoons, learn a lot, get your skill set down. If you're somewhere like Michigan and you got to have deer breakaways and deer stops and all this other stuff on there, when you're going out to use them, follow the law so you don't get in trouble, because there's no reason for anybody to get in trouble while they're learning this skill. And don't be afraid to go somewhere where you can use this skill, because if you ever need it, that's the last time or the last place you ever want to be is when you're trying to figure this out for the first time. Because when you see me do it, it looks really easy. When you start messing with this, it just seems to go all over the place on you, and the trails don't show up as well, and stuff. That's a skill that you learn. It's an easy skill to learn, but it's not always the most simple skill to learn, because you have to put some thought process in it, and you have to go do it, guys.